All right, everybody. Welcome to the Robbers of Catan Wood Tourney final. We have a great lineup for you today of Slenderman in the blue, our favorite name of the tournament, extra large tit, in red. Steven is my mom, Steven for short, in orange, and then Kudu, or Anish as we call him, at rounding out our lineup. All four contenders have played some amazing tournaments so far. I am Hunter. I'm joined today by Gene. Gene, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to see this game and see how it pans out. We got four very strong contestants here, all players who I ran into in pool play and got absolutely stomped on by. So, it's good to see them in the finals and not random people.
Proof is in the pudding, and hey, at least if you're gonna lose, lose to the champions is what I say. But looking at this board, Gene, is there anything that strikes you as being really noteworthy?
I mean, you got your wood heaven. Wood
Yeah,
will always have my heart with that. Only downside is that wood port's only on the 4 ore. So you can't really do much with it. And if you're going to play that game, it's a heavy risk. You might want to build on the 384 and then maybe build over to the wood port. But same thing with, brick is just, it's
yeah.
not
Brick
really
looks
in
a
this
little
game.
tough
So
here.
it doesn't seem like it will work.
Yeah, I mean that the 8-5-10 spot is a solid spot. In general, just from production standpoint, it's the wheat production on this board is on the 8 and the 6, so shouldn't be too hard to come by. The 8-5-10 spot, if that seems to be the only really great brick producing spot. We can touch on to the 3 as well, but brick might be a resource that really only one or two players manages to get plentiful access to. I mean, or always seems to be a more sparse resource. It is on an 8 spot. That's also on an 8-5-10 spot too. And we can see that initial spot coming down from red extra large tit. Going for that 8-4-3 spot on the brick and on the ore, like we just mentioned. What's your read on this play?
I mean, it's pretty sound, and I mean, there's the orange placement there, and that's another great spot. That's probably the
Yeah,
first and
six
second best
five
spot
nine
if you're
spot
not
is.
talking about You really could go on any of those. I probably lean towards the 8-5-10, and I kind of expect Anish to take that spot right now because his motto is no wheat equals defeat.
Yeah, I mean that 6-5-9 spot. The best production you can get in the game, and in definitely kind of cornering the market on the sheet. But we see Anish here in black taking the 8-5-10 spot, but not taking the one you were referencing. There was two of them on the board, going to kind of lock down that rest of that ore production on the 8. I mean, it's going to be very interesting here. We have in the initial placement on an 8-4-3 spot, and if you're Slenderman here and that 8-5-10 spot on the left hand side is falling to you with the fourth pick, I feel like you have to feel pretty good, right?
I mean, yeah, you have a chance to really corner off that side of the board if you're Slenderman because you get two placements. You can place on that 8-5-10. You can grab yourself an early dev card on the 8-3-4 as well, and you have that whole side of the board to yourself for the most part. No one's really going to go over there unless it's the 6-11-3 or maybe the hero woodport play. But red's the only one in the area right now.
Yeah, and going for the 8-5-10 spot, of course, you know there's lots of other options you can pair that with. It's gonna be very interesting to see how the resources shake out with these second selections here. Going early on, we can see that extra large basically prioritizing as much resource diversity as possible with that 8-4-3 spot, and after that we've kind of seen just straight value plays going for strong spots of strong production, good resource disparity. But it's gonna be very interesting. Yeah, you're right. Like Slenderman's selection here is gonna probably dictate the narratives that start to emerge in this game because it's gonna probably we're looking at a place here where I would be surprised if any of these contestants manage to come out of these initial placements with access to all five of the resources.
Yeah, and one thing you really want to look at is with the low brick numbers and even the sheep numbers aren't too amazing. It's going to be a port game, and you got to get to a port early. And we already see that Anish and Extra Large Tit are already battling over that 2-1 port right out the gate. It's going to be interesting to see will Anish prioritize a 6-9-2 just to get a road out the gate and try to get going towards that ore port first.
Yep, and we
And
see.
there's the two places that I expected. Yeah,
Yep, great
corner
call
off
out.
the board.
Yep. Well, God, I love the fact that we have you doing color commentary here. Yeah, totally spot on. Icelanderman getting, pretty much the only resource they don't have right now is wood, and you have to imagine with that 694 spot up there, there might be a good amount of wood to go around, and with very low brick, probably a lot of that wood won't really have a good pairing. So Icelandermen setting up themselves up pretty strong right here. I mean, that 843 spot from a resource production standpoint is exactly the same as extra large took with their first spot. I a little bit of a happenstance from the circumstance, but Icelanderman, I really am loving the initial placements here. And we have Steven and Orange going down that 694 spot. What do you think of their two initial placements, as well as Anish coming down to 1136?
Here's the thing. I know Steve very well. We've known each other for many years, and that was the most Steve play I've ever seen to just grab the wood heaven. Any home game we've ever played, that man is the first person to go on a triple resource, and he's not even near the wood port. But you know what? He can get that 3-1 on the 912, and no one's going to contest him for that. He's going to have that all to himself. He can wrap that six, and then that game can become very interesting very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean for Steve and Orange, I mean from a raw production standpoint, he's he's out and away in the lead right now. That 694 spot is only one little pip off the 659 spot. Doubled up on the 6 and the 9. Nice. If those numbers roll, he's going to be very happy. If they don't, he's going to be a little busted. But we'll see. We can see him setting up to go for that 6-3 spot on the sheep port. That can be a very strong spot for him, getting him access to not only ore, but opening up that 5-9 surplus sheep for some really beneficial trades. And yeah, Anish here very much seems to be signing up for the dev game. Doesn't really have access to brick, but that's going to be a common theme of this game. Has a little bit of access to wood, so if he can trade for a brick or two, that's probably going to do everything he needs. Definitely seems to be playing that dev card game, though. And looking at, if you're extra large here, I mean, what do you think?
The spots on the board that I see to get the hexes, and I kind of don't hate the idea of on the 6, 11, 12 down south. And I mean, you pick up some wheat, pick up pieces that you don't have, and then you've completely blocked off the race to the wheat port, which I think is what Anish and Steve are looking for in long game right now.
Yeah, and I mean those are the two resources that extra large doesn't have access to currently. They're gonna need wheat, and the only other wheat spot that's really available is that 9, 10, 11 spot. But yep, you called it straight off. You are a Nostradamus out here, and that's a selection that makes a lot of sense. If you're Anish and Steve, you have to be frustrated right now. I mean, both of them still have some avenues of expansion down there. You can, Steve can go to that 9-12 port. Anish can try to cut off Slenderman in the blue, but looking at all these initial placements, I mean, we can talk about, all of them have different strengths. Looking at extra large is the only contestant here that was able to get away with getting all 5 resources with their initial placements. Steve has some amazing production if the 6 and the 9 rolls. Anish is very much set up to dominate the development card game, which we know can be really key in these matchups, dominating the robbers, and it really is kind of dictating the flow of the game. And the Icelanderman just has another solid setup all around. You can definitely see why all 4 of these contestants reached the finals.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing is, we saw in the previous finals and the previous playoffs is that every little road matters at the end game. And at this moment right now, Anish has a pointless road going down on that 6-3, and he's got to be unhappy about it.
Yeah, especially, Anish only has that 10 wood, has no brick. Roads are not going to be very easy to come by for him unless he manages to pull some road builder development cards. We see Anish already purchased a development card on their first turn. That's going to be his game.
And blue is going to follow.
With 2.
With 2. Even better. But starting off with 1 right away, getting the power. Like I said, that second placement on the 8-3-4 was going to give you a dev card out the game. Maybe you pull that key road builder that you're going to need to place 2 settlements later.
Yeah, an extra large here with 8 cards in hand already. Has some interesting choices to put ahead. We see extra large also buying a development card. That's 4 development cards purchased in just about the first 6 turns.
Yeah, and for those of you that are watching, there's only what 25 development cards in the deck. We're almost at a fifth of them gone.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, this might end up being a very heavy development card game. We know Anish is set up perfectly to use them. And just in general, it might be hard for a lot of these contestants to reach the city threshold level with really only the eight offering strong ore production and probably an unlikely target for blocking with the robber. And so this could definitely be a heavy development card game. All right, we see extra large going for that ore port, trying to double up on the eight ore. It seems.
Yeah, and I mean, if you double up on that eight ore and the eight gets hot, every eight is any resource you want. You can imagine that there's going to be a lot more brick coming into the game. Extra large is going to start mobilizing, might even beat blue to that four ore, and then you're really cooking at that point.
Yeah, and there's the eight getting rolled, and Steve playing down a very we talked about that spot for Steve being a really great early expansion opportunity. We see him using it, and we see a niche here using a knight. That's what they pulled the first one, and if you're extra large and you're trying to double up on that aura spot, you're very happy that you share that with Anish because Anish is going to be bathing in those knights probably,
Oh
and
yeah, and
and
Anish is
buying.
going to be all over it.
Yeah, he used a knight and bought a development card all in the same turn.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the battle between blue and black. It's going to be a battle for those knights
Yeah,
because it's going to go the entire game 8-3-4 versus 6-3-11. You are as tight as they come.
yeah, and if you're
Just blue a tiny bit better in a probability sense, but it's
yeah.
really like it's not much, especially because Anish has the fives sheep along with it too.
Yeah, exactly. And he seems to be set up a little bit better for that route. I mean, blue is going to be getting a lot more wheat, of course. If they can somehow manage to get down to that wheat port, which it's not out of the question, that could be a powerful tool for them. But they're going to have to face a lot of uphill competition because extra large is set up down there as well. And we see the night game move to blue's eight spot. I mean, that hurts for blue, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Anish kind of draws the short straw here because he acts right before blue, and if blue's got a knight in pocket, that six wheat's going to be blocked the entire game. That is just a they have to be salivating over that spot. Three blocks, pull from whoever you want, and then you have the wheat domination on the 8 and 10. No one else can get wheat besides the 12.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, if Anish and Icelanderman are trading knights back and forth, Anish is going to naturally get the short end of that stick. All right, we see Icelanderman looking for an ore here. We can see the price quite high and not getting any takers for it.
Yeah, and I don't expect many trades early towards blue. I think blue has a very dominant setup to take over if they start getting going. Um, Really, the only way that I think blue's going to get any early trades is if it's a win-win. I get a point, you get a point.
Yeah, and for blue, that's going to be tough because blue needs wood. Without wood, they're not going to really expand. I mean, they're set up well on the left hand side. They can go up to that 9-10 spot. You know, very much can give themselves lots of resource production. And that 9-10 spot kind of solves all of their problems. The question is, can they get there?
Yeah, and I imagine that trade that Anish just offered. I'm imagining that's that offer for that win-win. Anish probably wants to city, and he's willing to give blue what they need to move a little bit.
Yeah, and we see blue, using their second night of the game already, getting up to early lead, has eight cards in hand and still hasn't used their rolled or used the robber yet. So this could end up being a very big churn for blue. Stays at nine, no seven getting rolled, and able to use those resources they got to build a city. That's such a strong play for them early in this game.
Oh yeah, and now you say, blue just took over right away. Like I said, if they could get going that tiny bit, they could run away. But I don't think it's over by any means, even if they get two cities down, because getting wood and actually moving, they're really hoping for a road builder.
Yeah, and we saw a move from Steve. We're gonna expect to see a lot, doing a 4-for-1 with Wood, and Anish following up with his own second night. Um, Interesting placement going for that four. It definitely seems motivated by a desire to steal a certain kind of resource, I would think.
Yeah, I would say that he's probably looking for wood to mobilize. There hasn't been many tens, and I mean, you're blocking off wood heaven over there. But again, blue just straight right back at you. I roll
Yeah.
a 7, I'm blocking that 6. I have the wheat empire. Come to me if you want wheat.
Yeah, if that when that 6 wheat is blocked, it is so huge for blue. I mean, cutting off all three of his contestants from wheat basically. That 12 is there, but I'm not going to ever count that 12 production. And probably the most singularly impactful spot to rob for a player in this game, and honestly in most games that you're ever going to play in Catan.
And you know what? I'm paying attention to the chat as we're going, and we're seeing the table talk right away. Extra large hit has just absolutely dominated these tournaments and demanded respect to the point where even when they are not in the lead or they are not in the best setup, it is please block red. Do not let them expand.
Yeah, I mean, and in all honesty, if you look at this board objectively, Black has an initial setup that is very self-sufficient, but is low on raw production. With his initial placements is on a 6 and 8, but his other four spots are a 11 and 12, a 3 and a 4, and doesn't really
Yeah,
have great opportunities to really expand initially. It seems.
yeah, you do have the added fact that they do have 6 different numbers. Red and black both have 6 different numbers, as where the other two we can't say that. So you do get, more numbers of rolls will bring you resources, but they can't take off as quickly because they're not gaining 3 resources at a time or 2 resources at a time.
Yeah, it definitely seems like this is like a red is perfectly set up in my opinion to get second place and I say this as a professional second place getter. I have in many tournaments
Oh, you're
now.
the best at it.
I am the best at almost winning games at Catan, but not winning them. My record in all these previous tournaments could prove it. But red is set up here where it's like 6 different spots, access to every resource. Red is going to be consistent. But all three of his opponents have much more explosive potential, and you have to assume at least one of them is going to go off.
To give you all a little background on the setup for this tournament, we had 32 people in this tournament. The top 16 made playoffs, and Hunter somehow managed to find his way in 17th, just
Uh,
missing the cut, despite having the fourth most victory points throughout the 4 placement games
and
in the entire tournament.
and to make it even better, we have been running tournaments for a while now. This is, I don't even know, over the last few years, season 10, 11, something like that. The last 3 tournaments, I have missed the playoffs by one spot each time. One spot with
Yeah,
a,
and you
with
know
a
what?
top 5 or 6 number of victory points. Obviously, professional second place getter over here.
And you know what? I feel like I need to take a little bit of blame because the game that shot you out of the playoffs, I was in, and Smurfy took over early, and I was blocking Steve out of pure spite for Steve, and she just took off, and we were never able to block her, and it was over when she got that win. She knocked you out, got into the playoffs, and what was it for? She's not even here right now.
Well, I'm just building myself up for the future. But again, looking at this board of extra large, you just built down a huge city for them. I mean, that is going to pay huge dividends. That's the exact kind of move that they need. When they're probably not going to have great settlement opportunities, but if they can get down cities and keep them down and keep them unblocked, could be very big for them.
Yeah, and I mean, all they're sitting on is 1-3. One
Yeah.
three, and you get your 2 brick, and you're going to be able to move, you're going to be able to build. That's all that you need.
Yeah, God. And Steve here using a monopoly for a brick, right? That's basically what he did. Stole 4 wheat, traded 4 for 1 for a brick to build a settlement. You know, that settlement is a huge settlement for Steve. Definitely they can use it, but very, very funny to see a monopoly essentially get used for a single resource.
But I mean, that shouts out how scarce brick is in this game
Yeah.
because he literally looked around and said, man, 8-6 wheat have been the numbers. I'm going to steal the wheat. Maybe I get lucky. You hate to see a monopoly used that way. And now more gamesmanship. Orange is a threat. Everyone except me is a threat. Stop blocking me, please.
I mean, Anish is at 8 cards in hand, and the dice rolls haven't necessarily been favorable to Anish. I mean, the 6 game blocked has just so constantly has just it completely impedes his game plan. His game plan is centered around having access to all three of the development card resources. He's not really going to be settling or building roads, and so if that 6 is blocked, Anish's game plan is completely shut down through no fault of his own. It's just that 6 spot is triple invested, and blue has had half the knights used, and not a lot of 7s have gotten rolled.
And I want to bring a quick attention. Extra large tip bought a dev card on the first turn of the game and has been holding it the entire time. Now, there is a chance that it's a year plenty and they're just saving it and they just want to have it to make that second city or build that settlement. But you got to think it's got to be a monopoly or a VP, because Road Builder would have been played by now to block off a niche, secure that 2-to-1 port for good, and then build another one towards the wheat port.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, it is. If it is not one of those two, I'd be surprised for sure. All right, and we see Icelanderman, stealing from Anish and then building a settlement, and the settlement's not necessarily going to add a ton of resource production, but doubling up, if you're going to double up on a single resource, doubling up on the brick definitely seems quite like a strong plan given its scarcity, but more importantly, getting that 3-for-1 port in a position where Icelanderman probably isn't going to be a super common trading partner.
Yeah, and I mean, you also see 3-to-1 port, you get 3 wheat on the 8. That 8 is that wood that they need.
Yep, exactly. And we can see they're already set up to build our settlement on that 4-11 spot. Kind of dominate that left-hand side, and you see the path to victory for them quite clearly. Not only is largest army in play, but they're probably the best setup to get largest road. The way they're naturally set up right now, they're very close to securing it already. They're going to have the best brick production. They're probably going to be able to get enough timber, and they already have 3 settlements going on for it. They can start to city on with their production. So the Icelanderman path to victory is definitely becoming pretty apparent, but extra large pulling even at 4 VP, getting on that ore port.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, this is a 3-horse race right now. Anish has got nothing going as far as expanding, can't even get a city down. He's fallen behind. He needs it in the next rotation. Otherwise, he's going to fall behind completely. But you know what? That's kind of what you get for being the commissioner. He's told me all throughout this tournament that he's been targeted a bit just because of his name, and that he's ready to start playing under an alias just for that purpose.
Yep, and I mean, hey, Anish is definitely set up to secure largest army, has a development card in hand. Icelanderman doesn't. So if Anish secures largest army and can hold on to that is a necessary part of his winning strategy. But the only contestant is still at 2 VP.
Yeah, and again, just the table talk is crazy. Steve is just saying, I'm not going to negotiate. You're giving me 2 cards of what I want, or it's nothing. You need to bend to me. You need to move. Well, good luck, because no one else is trading you, and I'll give you what you need if you give me the 2 cards that I need.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like Anish is trying to offer an ore back, which, that is the missing part of Steve's development card picture, and we see that trade being executed. So now you have to assume Steve can buy a development card, already has 1 in hand. Not really going to be going for largest army, but for Steve, it's definitely a gap in the strategy. So, seems like it's 2 or 1 ore. After he says, I don't negotiate.
Yeah, I'm not negotiating. 2 cards, 1 ore. Doesn't matter. But I do want to point out the 8 ore on the top right here. I mean, red is now getting 3 ore and has the ore port, and then their other placement is literally just dev card stuff. Yep. This could get spicy really quick. They just pull another dev card now. All of a sudden, they could be holding 4 dev cards out of nowhere in 1 turn of just a few 8s. And that's a lot of power that you're looking at there. This dev card game is going to go crazy.
Yeah, and we have actually sitting on 2 development cards, hasn't used them. Steve helping out red with that knight. Kind of interesting choice, honestly, for me. Seems like they've identified blue as being the bigger threat.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong, I feel, but I yeah,
But then
I
Anish
love it.
rolls a 7 here, so
Anish just sitting right over his own eight, and he's saying, "Man, I really gotta block extra large tick because I don't want to see this man run away with another
yeah,
championship."
seems like Anish decides that it's a step too far, and to the audience we're watching, from Anish's point of view now, which is why we can kind of see a little bit of his actions. We see him, not only stealing from Icelanderman, but making a trade with extra large tit. That seems like a lot of development card resources that they're trading for. So I wonder if they'll be able to purchase another one soon. Big 6 for Steve.
Yeah, I mean, any type
Oh,
of six
big
for
9
Steve, he could
too.
run away.
The 6-9.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is it is a joke that writes itself, but for Steve, it is deadly serious right now.
and you know what? Very quietly, he also grabbed that 2-1 port before, and he does have the 5 and 9, and that just gave him his pathway to his city
Oh God! And
all
now
day.
every five and
Sixes and
nine is any
nines.
resource that Steve wants.
Yep. And you combine that with the fact that he's getting 2 wood and 2 wheat for sixes, he could run away, and he's caught back up in this game. And still, we're still sitting here going, man, when's Anish going to make the play
Well,
and get
Anish,
back in?
and right on cue, Anish, securing a 3-for-1 port, doubling up on the wood. Love to see Anish get a board, but yeah, this kind of talks about the fact that Anish, the initial setup was kind of getting blocked. I mean, that's his best early settlement opportunity, and it's you know, it's if you compare it to say Slenderman's opportunity on the 5 brick, it looks extremely unfavorable, and that was probably the initial placement that we were talking about as the least valuable so far.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that he built over to the 10 and he really only doubled up on the 10. He didn't really gain any resource production by doing that. But you look at where Anish is now, he is completely boxed in. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, he could build 2 roads to get up to the 9, 10, 11 or the 4, 5, 11, but
we're
he
seeing it
doesn't
the
have
brick.
road
Yeah,
resources.
yeah. At least
So
now
he's kind of
tens.
stuck.
Yeah, at least now he's got the wood, right? But I mean, it is an uphill battle for sure for Anish. But coming up, and if you're looking at the board, only down by 1 VP, but it feels like so much further than that given the setups that his 3 competitors have right now.
Yeah, and I mean, he could grab the knights. I'm sure he can, but he's probably not going to hold it in the long run just because of that city on the 8-3-4 and the city on the other 8-3-4. Like the two 8-3-4s are ruining Anish's day.
Yeah, Anish is going to need to secure it and just build this, barely hold on to it. Luckily, largest armies, the hardest dev card, the hardest victory victory thing to take from somebody. But I mean, even that is not an overwhelming advantage for Anish. I mean, he's the only
Yeah, and I
contestant
think
without a city.
it's also important to pay attention to the number game on that. There are 14 knights in the deck, and 5 have been played. So at this point, if he could get up to 5 or 6 knights, he should have it locked up, but he's got to step on the gas if he wants to pull away on it.
Yeah, and a 2 getting rolled here. Steve, passing the turn with 8 cards in hand. A little bit of a risky play, but we'll see if it works out for him. And we see Anish here. Looks like Anish, looking at some expansion opportunities here, looking like he's going to get on the board with the city. And
And
yep,
it's really a question of which one. And I think that because of the dev card game, I think he chooses correctly because of the 5. I,
yeah,
I just don't think that 3 is going to give him enough sheep to really stay in the dev card game. You're going to have the 6.
yeah. And
That
now,
you're going to get the 8.
God, that 8 and that 6 spot, the 6 wheat and the 8 ore, are just big, big spots.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of thinking, is extra large tit holding on to a monopoly from
Well,
turn 1 of
we
this
do see
entire
them.
game?
We do see him when using the knight, which I think makes sense. There was a development card they purchased that they never really got the chance. They never really had reason to use it. We see them using it now, and very interesting. When you go to block blue, you kind of block that 4 ore seems to be the strategy, and when you compare that to when blue gets opportunity to block the 6 or the 8, I mean, the robber equity for blue is sky high, huh?
Yeah, but the thing is, you block that 4, and that temporarily is going to take blue out of the dev card game, and that's going to hold it to a niche. It's going to give extra large tit a shot at getting it, And for Steve, it's just going to slow them down completely to give him a little bit of time to maybe connect his roads in the middle, build on the 4-5-11, and then get a little bit cooking. So it seems for everybody that's in their best interest to block that 4 ore.
Yeah, and we see Steve, starting to, building a road, going upward, trying to go for that 4-11-5 spot, which, solid production and looking, also kind of opens up an interesting path for them to compete with Ice Slenderman for largest road. We see Anish, though, here, roll to 7, is trying to decide where to place his robber. And we can see in the chat he's a little bit conflicted.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is he's sitting there, he's like, who's got what I need?
Yeah.
And he's probably thinking that. It probably didn't have much to do with the numbers, and I think that ultimately he doesn't want to create an enemy out of anybody at this moment because he is behind.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really hurt Steve. It does take red off wood, but wood isn't necessarily is that the most valuable resource. But I mean, that 8 is just, whew, that's a lot.
You know what? I gotta say, Slenderman just captured my reaction. I just said "whoa" to myself. He goes, "Jesus!" The 8 brought in 3 wheat and 5 ore into this game.
God, and yeah, we have a niche, Icelanderman, and extra large all above the limit, and we see a niche building a second city and getting right back into it. He had, this is the exact kind of swing and stretch Anish had. That 8 has just been huge for him. The knight has stayed off the 6. He's got just enough wheat, and Anish now is starting to build a picture of how they can win. Having 2 cities is so huge for them. Like that brought them right back into it. And, we were just talking a few minutes ago about the fact that he really had an uphill battle. Well, he climbed that, but Slenderman clapping right back with his own second city.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, if that 4 ore gets blocked, Slenderman cannot compete on the dev cards, and then all of a sudden, Anish is sitting at 2 knights with 1 card in hand, and if he has a knight, that's 2 points.
Yep.
And there's no one that can stop him on that. I mean, extra large tit grabbing 2 cards right there, and maybe he could, but you imagine extra large tit plays a knight next turn, then Anish is going to respond by immediately taking the army with him having another 2 cards behind in hand.
Yeah, and Anish is back up to 9 cards in hand already. I mean, I don't think we've seen anyone discard down to 7. This has been a high flying game for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we just saw people at 15 cards, 13 cards, 10 cards. We've been avoiding it pretty well. You kind of got to think that.
Oh, a third development card in a single turn. I mean, so extra large had a city in hand, but opts instead to buy 3 development cards, putting himself up to 4. I mean, that is just like there's so much potential in that for extra large.
Yeah, and the thing is, if I'm in their spot, I think 3 development cards is going to give you much more production than 1 city could, especially when their option for city is really just the 6-11-2, because you're not getting much out of that 8, unless it does make 2 resources on the 8, but then it's just going to get blocked. So
yeah, and if you go on a 6-11-12, you already know that 6 spot is a very attractive target for being robbed.
Yeah. And like I said, there's only 8 knights left in the deck that we know of. And if you could pull 3 of them, then all of a sudden you are a huge favorite to hold on to those 2 points forever.
Yeah, and I mean, they could be VPs, they could be monopolies, road builders. And we see Anish buying another development card here after Steve. Oh, Anish buying 2 development cards here.
I saw that come over.
Yeah, I saw those 2 come across the screen too. We can't really block that from our viewing experience as best as we can, as much as we're trying to block out what he has in his hand. But Anish now, a little bit spice here.
Yeah, and I mean, I do want to dive into it a little bit,
Yeah, we have to talk about it.
We know what it is, and you know what? If I'm Anish, there's so many options.
Dude, those are like
you have the 3 to 1
Those are
port.
2 amazing things. And first of all, now that's the second monopoly. Now we know there's not another monopoly out there, and Anish doesn't have to be worried about it. I mean, the monopoly can just be such a swing in a game like this, and a road builder can build up to that 9, 10, 11 spot and secure another settlement opportunity and build a strong settlement for himself. And that's going to be key for him, because Anish is in a position where Anish is going to set up to get largest army, even though extra large is pulling really close to that. Anish is going to have to secure that soon. If Anish secures largest army, has 3 cities, then another settlement and a victory point. That's it.
Yeah, I think Anish grabs the largest army on this turn. I think it's
It's too
just the right
risky not to
play.
take it. Yeah.
Force extra large to play two of them to take it from you. Don't give it to him for free. Um, and I mean, you have such a great shot at taking over this game with those cards that he just pulled.
Yeah, I mean, as we're talking about, like, Anish is here saying at 5 VP has some really interesting development cards in hand. All his competitors are at 5 VP too, and Steve has up to 7 with that longest road, and Anish rolling a 7. Interesting, not using the knight before he rolled a 7. I wonder if it's an oversight or if he's just going to give extra large opportunity to get the. I guess for Anish it's a calculation of he wants to wonder if he can have a really explosive monopoly or largest road churn, and saying I don't if I lose out on a little bit of sheep, that's fine.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting there was we saw Anish scroll through the chat, and he's kind of just looking at everything that's been picked up over the last few rolls. Maybe he's thinking this could be the Monopoly shot, or he's trying to pull exactly one card that he needs.
Yeah, and it seems like we see Anish, looking like Anish is gonna maybe try to do some building here. Yep, buy another development card instantly. Interesting. You have to assume largest army. The knight's gonna get used here with only one card in hand.
Yeah, I would be kind of shocked if he didn't. It just seems like the right play. You can't. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
And you can't let that turn get around and give red those 2 points because we saw the cards come over. We know exactly what's in hand. So, as far as dev cards go, so when you think about that, you have to do it. You don't have another night behind to compete and be able to play two in a row and take it over. This was your turn to do it.
Yeah, we see Icelanderman secure another settlement, and it feels like every single roll now, it's not a 7 or a 2. Like there's just resources flying all over the place.
Yeah, and I think ultimately these next two rotations are going to decide this game.
Yeah, it feels like so many of these competitors are poised to break out and start to threaten to win the game. No one's quite there yet, but that 7, extra large rolling that 7. Moving the robbers, stealing a resource, and 3 development cards in hand. Be very interesting to see what they have. I mean, if they have 2 knights, they'll probably try to use one this turn. Continue to threaten Anish and force Anish to keep using knights.
Well, to me, I mean, since we're on Anish's view and we know the second monopoly's out there, to me, extra large tip pulled a victory point on that first turn, held it for a very long time.
Whoa, extra large is
And
just cycling development cards.
yeah, I mean, but what else are they really going to do? What can they do? They could build over to the 12, or they could tripod to the 3. That's it.
Yeah,
Their game is development cards. Even sitting on the 8 isn't really beneficial for them. They need to
yeah,
cycle development cards. They need to get as many knights as possible of the
and
7
VPs. Yeah,
of the 6 that are left. You
yeah,
have to get them.
yeah. And I mean, and we because we're on Anish's view, and we can see what those development cards because of the UI comes down. We know Anish doesn't have a VP in hand. We know that Icelanderman and Steve don't have VPs in hand because they don't have any development cards. So and there's not many development cards left in the deck. It's not surprising to either assume extra large has maybe up to even 3 victory points, and if they don't, there's gonna be a lot of victory points remaining in that pile.
Yeah, I mean, there can't
There's the
be
second
really
row builder
anything that
being
it can
used.
be.
Anish going to that
We've
9-10
seen
spot.
we've seen 2 row builders. We know the 2 monopolies are out there. We've seen a year of plenty. So there's only 1 year of plenty left. There's 5 VPs to be known of, and 6 knights left.
Yep. Yep.
So when you think about it that way, extra large tip probably has at least 2 VPs in hand.
Yes, and extra large is looking like they're probably gonna try to go for that largest army and VPs to win. I mean, if they pull 5 VPs, even though they only have 5 victory points, otherwise, I mean that's the game. Icelanderman buying another development card. Okay.
Let me tell you, these championship games have delivered. The ones that I've been commentating on have been absolutely amazing games. This is now a 4-horse race down to the wire. Who's going to have the last leg ready to go?
Yeah, I mean it is like all these competitors are in this. Like they're all at 5, 6, 7 VPs, but kind of they all have some really interesting opportunities available to them. And we see extra large, lots of sevens getting rolled. The sevens are in a lot of ways the least interesting rolls of the game, or at least from a explosive standpoint. I mean, they're really impactful for blocking off competitors and things like that. But,
yeah, but it's definitely not what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, every
You're
time a 6 or an 8 gets rolled,
on your turn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's for our perspective, an 8 gets rolled and that's like 13 resources coming out of the bank.
Yeah, and especially what Anish wants. Ideally, extra large tit rolls an 8, Steve rolls an 8, and then blue is stuck with 8 wheat in hand when it comes to Anish's turn.
Oh my God, yeah, that is going to be like lovely for that monopoly, and it can give Anish like a monopoly like that is super impactful. Extra large using a third knight here, pulling even with Anish, very interesting.
Yeah, and he still has 2 in hand, and I guess one could be a knight.
One
I just
has
feel like
to
with
be a
how
VP,
long he
right?
held on to them, I'm calling a bluff. I don't think he has it.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, yeah, I imagine one is a VP for sure, right?
Yeah, I'm going off the first one was
Yeah,
a
that's what I'm
VP.
thinking.
And that sucks that he pulled a VP in the early game when he really needed something else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could be 2 VPs in hand setting themselves up, to potentially maybe still steal large army next turn, but up to 9 cards already for extra large. Oh yeah, that 8 gets rolled.
Wow.
Wow, alrighty. Let's see what comes out here. I mean, Anish has a decision to make for sure. And I mean, you have to consider using a monopoly here. I mean, we see Anish going back, looking at what everyone has. His heart has to be pounding.
That 8 is so big. And I mean, there's low numbers of a lot of resources. We got a total of 19, 24, 31 resources in hand right now.
Oh, yep. So 8 wheat.
There it is.
Anish 15 cards in hand. I mean, and at 7 VP, we probably can't get 3 this turn, but we can see it settles and wins the game. Had the VP in hand that we missed.
Wow. And that monopoly was decisive. I told you if he could get 8 wheat from the monopoly, that's all he needed with that 3-1 port.
Wow, Anish coming in huge monopoly. Oh my God, look at those 7s. Wow.
Those were some quiet 7s, I have to say.
Yeah, well, it's because every single other roll was just resources were flowing. Wow. I mean, great game. First of all, congratulations to Anish, the commissioner, getting the win. It's been a long time since he's won one of these tournaments. I'm sure that feels good. And, he likes to talk about target being on his back. I don't think this will help.
Oh, Captain, my captain. Behind Anish, we all stand.
Yeah, and I mean, look at these resource stats. I mean, pretty even across the board. In extra large, you have to only gain 59 resources. You have to give the props to him. Staying in this game, threatening to win till the very end. But Anish with a crazy come from behind victory. I mean, that 2-turn stretch in the middle of the game where he went from being at 3 VP to having 2 cities, that was huge.
Yeah, and I told you, he needed to make a move in those 2 rotations or he was out of it, and he finally expanded, got another city down, and then all of a sudden just took over this game.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Well, Gene, thank you for joining me today. Congratulations to all the competitors that played in this final. Congratulations to Anish for the championship. And we'll see you with our next tourney. I think it might be a 3v3, Gene. Exciting stuff. A little bit of a mix.
I've heard some rumors. And for those of you that are watching and stay till the end, make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and keep up with all of our next tourneys.
Alrighty, well, everyone have a good one, and we'll see you next time.